barricaded. A Whitehorse editorial in the 1980s noted that this route would be an ideal alignment if the Alaska Highway should ever require a bypass reroute around Whitehorse. By June 1914, the WP&YR had 11 locomotives, 15 passenger cars and 233 freight cars operating on 110 miles, 180 kilometers, of trackage, generating $68,368 in passenger revenue and $257,981 in freight revenue, still a profitable operation. As operating expenses were only $100,347.34, while all other railroads in the Yukon, such as the Klondike Mines Railway at Dawson City, had been abandoned by 1914. The WP&YR continued to operate. During the Great Depression, traffic was sparse on the WP&YR, and for a time trains operated as infrequently as once a week. World War II. Looking south from the tunnel, Alaska became strategically important for the United States during World War II. There was concern that the Japanese might invade it, as Alaska was the closest part of the United States to Japan. Following the attack on Pearl Harbor, the decision was made by both U.S. and Canadian governments to construct the Alaska Highway as an all-weather overland route to ensure communication. One of the principal staging points for construction was Whitehorse, which could be supplied by the WP&YR. By that time the railroad was a financially starved remnant from Klondike Gold Rush days, with well-worn engines and rolling stock. Despite this, the railroad moved 67,496 tons during the first 9 months of 1942, more than double its prior annual traffic. Even this was deemed insufficient, so the U.S. government leased the railroad for the duration, effective at 12:01 a.m. on the 1st of October, 1942, handing control to the United States Army. That became the 770th Railway Operating Battalion of the Military Railway Service, took over train operations in company with the WP&YS civilian staff. Canadian law forbade foreign government agencies from operating within Canada and its territories, but Japanese forces had occupied some of the Aleutian Islands by this time, and an accommodation was quickly reached to make an illegal action legal. The Misses scoured the U.S. for usable narrow-gauge locomotives and rolling stock, and soon a strange and colorful assortment began arriving at Skagway. The single largest group was 70 and RGWK 28 Class 2-8-2S, acquired prior to the lease, in August 1942. 2-8-0S from the Silverton Northern and the Colorado and Southern, all over 40 years old, and a pair of ET and WNC 4-6-0S soon appeared, among others, as well as 11 new War Department Class S1182-8-2S. WP&YS original roster of 10 locomotives and 83 cars was soon eclipsed by the Army's additional 26 engines and 258 cars. The increase in traffic was remarkable. In the last 3 months of 1942, the railroad moved 25,756 tons. In 1943, the line carried 281,962 tons, equivalent to 10 years' worth of typical pre-war traffic. All this despite some of the most severe winter weather recorded since 1910. Gales, snowdrifts and temperatures of -30 degrees Fahrenheit succeeded in blockading the line from 15 February 1943 and the 27th of January 14 February 1944. The peak movement occurred on the 4th of August 1943, when the White Pass moved 38 trains north and south, totaling 3,346 gross /2,085 net tons, and 2,236 locomotive miles in 24 hours. 35. Control of the railroad was handed back to its civilian operators late in 1944. 36, 1946-1982. One of the present-day White Pass diesel locomotives is shown here at Skagway, Alaska. White Pass and Yukon Route No. 93. In May 1947, the railroad purchased its last steam locomotives. These were a pair of 2-8-2 Mikado-type engines built by the Baldwin Locomotive Works of Philadelphia, numbered number 72 and No. 73. In 1951, the White Pass and Yukon Corporation Limited, a new holding company, was incorporated to acquire the three railway companies comprising the WP and YR from the White Pass and Yukon Company, Limited, which was in liquidation. The railway was financially restructured. While most other narrow-gauge systems in North America were closing around this time, the WP and YR remained open. In 1959, the first dividend to stockholders was paid, 10 cents per share. 37. The railroad began dieselizing in the mid to late 1950s, one of the few North American narrow-gauge railroads to do so. The railroad bought shovel-nose diesels from General Electric, and later road switches from American Locomotive Company, ALCO, and Montreal Locomotive Works, as well as a few small switches. On the 30th of June, 1964, the line retired its last steam locomotive. The railroad was an early pioneer of intermodal freight traffic, commonly called containerization. Advertising of the time referred to it as the container route. The WP and YR owned an early container ship, Clifford J. Rogers, built in 1955, and in 1956 introduced containers, although these were far smaller than truck-sized containers than came into use in the United States in 1956 and could not readily be handed off to other railroads or ship lines. The Faro Lead Zinc Mine opened in 1969. The railway was upgraded with 7 new 1,200 HP, 890 kilowatts, locomotives from ALCO, new freight cars, or buckets, a straddle carrier at Whitehorse to transfer from Railway's new fleet of trucks, a new dock at Skagway, and assorted work on the rail line to improve the alignment. In the fall of 1969, a new tunnel and bridge that bypassed Dead Horse Gulch were built to replace the tall steel cantilever bridge that could not carry the heavier trains. This enormous investment made the company dependent on continued ore traffic to earn the revenue, and left the railway vulnerable to loss of that ore carrying business. 38. As well, passenger traffic on the WP and YR was increasing as cruise ships started to visit Alaska's Inside Passage. There was no road from Skagway to Whitehorse until 1978. Even after the road was built, the White Pass still survived on the ore traffic from the mines. During this time, the green-yellow engine color scheme, with a Thunderbird on the front, was replaced with blue, patterned with black and white. The green-yellow scheme was restored in the early 1990s, along with the Thunderbird. As of 2005, however, one engine still had the blue color scheme. The steam engines, however, remains basic black. In 1982, metal prices plunged, striking with devastating effect on the mines that were the White Pass and Yukon routes' main customers. Many, including the Faro Lead Zinc Mine, closed down, and, with that traffic gone, the White Pass was doomed as a commercial railroad. Hopeful of a reopening, the railway ran at a significant loss for several months, carrying only passengers. However, the railway closed down on October 7, 1982. 39. Some of the road's ALCO diesels were sold to a railroad in Colombia, and 3 out of 4, and one off-piece was wrecked, of the newer ALCO diesels built by and in storage with ALCO's Canadian licensee MLW, Montreal Locomotive Works, were sold to U.S. Gypsum in Plaster City, California. Only one of these modern narrow-gauge diesels, the last narrow-gauge diesel locomotives built for a North American customer, was delivered to the White Pass. The 5 diesels sold to Colombia were not used there as they were too heavy, and were reacquired in 1999. One was nearly lost at sea during a storm as it broke loose in the barge and slowly rolled towards the edge. The railway was the focus of the first episode of the BBC television series Great Little Railways in 1983. Heritage Railway, 1988 present. White Pass and Yukon Route. 2004 train entering the tunnel. The shutdown, however, was not for long. Tourism to Alaska began to increase, with many cruise ships stopping at Skagway. The scenery of the White Pass route sounded like a great tourist draw, and trails of the White Pass and Yukon route were laid right down to FedEx, even along them, for former freight and cruise ship traffic. Cruise operators, remembering the attraction of the little mountain climbing trains to their passengers, pushed for a reopening of the line as a heritage railway. The White Pass was and is perfectly positioned to sell a railroad ride through the mountains to cruise ship tourists. They do not even have to walk far from the ships. Following a deal between White Pass and the United Transportation Union, representing Alaska employees off the road, the White Pass route was reopened between Skagway and White Pass in 1988, purely for tourist passenger traffic. The White Pass route also bid on the ore haul from the newly reopened Ronin, but its price was considerably higher than road haulage over the Klondike Highway. The railway still uses vintage parlor cars, the oldest 4 built in 1881 and predating WP&YR by 17 years, and 4 new cars built in 2007 follow the same 19th century design. At least 8 cars have wheelchair lifts. A work train reached Whitehorse on the 22nd of September, 1988, its intent being to haul 2 locomotives parked in Whitehorse for 6 years, to Skagway to be overhauled and used on the tourist trains. While in Whitehorse for approximately 1 week, it hauled the parked rolling stock flat cars, tankers and a caboose out of the downtown area's sidings, and the following year, they were hauled further south, and eventually sold. Most of the tracks in downtown Whitehorse have now been torn up, and the line's terminus is 6 city blocks south of the old train depot at First Avenue and Main Street. A single new track along Theatre Front once enabled the operation of the Whitehorse Waterfront Trolley, a tourist line run by a local historical society. After customs and Canadian Labour Union jurisdictional issues were resolved, the WP&YR main line reopened to Fraser in 1989, and to Bennett in 1992. A train reached Carcross in 1997 to participate in the Ton of Gold Centennial celebration. A special passenger run, by invitation only, was made from Carcross to Whitehorse on the 10th of October, 1997, and there are plans to eventually reopen the entire line north to Whitehorse if a market exists. So far, the tracks are only certified to Carcross by the Canadian Transportation Agency. On the 29th of July, 2006, White Pass ran a train to Carcross and announced passenger service would begin in May 2007, 6 trains per week, with motorcoach return trips. Since the distance between Skagway and Whitehorse is 107 miles, 172 kilometers, and the distance of line between Skagway and Carcross is 67.5 miles, 109 kilometers, 40. This means that about 63% of the original line is now used again. Even when the length of the unused portion of the line is excluded, the WP&YR is longer than other notable North American narrow-gauge railroads, such as the Cumbres and Toltec Scenic Railroad, 64 miles, 103 kilometers, and the Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad, 45 miles, 72 kilometers. WP&YR acquired some rolling stock from Canadian National's Newfoundland operations, which shut down in November 1988. The acquisition included 8 side pivot, drop side air dump cars for large rocks, and 8 longitudinal hoppers. For ballast, still painted in CN orange. These cars were converted from Newfoundland's 1067 mm, 3 feet 6 in, gauge bogies to White Pass and Yukon routes 3 feet, 914 mm, narrow gauge bogies. Most trains are hauled by the line's diesel locomotives, painted in green, lower, and yellow, upper. But one of the line's steam locomotives is still in operation too, number 73, a 2-8-2 Mikado type locomotive. Another steam locomotive, number 40, a 2-8-0 consolidation type locomotive, was on loan from the Georgetown Loop R.R. in Colorado for upwards of 5 years, but was returned after only 2 years. Former WP&Y 69, a 2-8-0, was reacquired in 2001, rebuilt, and re-entered service in 2008. Also operational, a few times a year, is an original steam-powered rotary snowplow, an essential device in flying's commercial service days. The rotaries were retired in 1964, along with the remaining steam engines that pushed them, and snow clearing was done by Caterpillar tractor. While it is not needed, as the tourist season is only in the summer months, it is a spectacle in operation, and the White Pass runs the steam plow for railfan groups once or twice a winter. Pushed by 2 diesel locomotives, in 2000 only, it was pushed by 2 steam locomotives, numbers 73 and 40.
Yes, break. We have recorded 38 minutes. I like to see the news in the Danish television in 5 minutes. Because we have a G7 top meeting with the President of the United States, France President, Japan, and the head of the EU, European Union. And there's a lot of stuff I like to download there. So, but I have a fresh paper, one more paper there. But I'll do that later. When I'm finished reading this, I will look, and I'm not finished. I think I have to do it later. But now now I need to drink more because it's very hot. And I will have to keep my doors and windows open to like 10 or 11 p.m. because it's 30. Now it's dropped a little bit. It's 30, still 30 degrees. Yes. So, but I'm watching the news on this one because this keep crashing because it's burning hot here. So I'm watching my news there.